Hello everyone, my name is Kishan Agarwal and today I am going to present my Tech Talk video of analog and digital electronics. And my topic is DNA like materials could open new computing fronters. So, what is DNA? DNA contains the instruction needed for an organism to develop, survive, and reproduce. To carry out these functions, DNA sequences must be converted into messages that can be used to produce proteins, which are the complex molecules that do not do much of work in our bodies. So, a computer should as computers have progressed over the last few decades with their component transistor getting even smaller and even more numerous on a single chip, that relentless progress famously described by Moore's law has begun to bump up against fundamental physical limits to what can be done with the present attached lines and silicon technology. But now, a new twist involving an inorganic molecule that has a DNA like helical shape may provide an alternative path that could shrink transistors down to atomic size, and even DNA molecules themselves might ultimately become the bits and bytes and logic gates of the future. So, transistors are the fundamental building blocks of computer chips, just as proteins are the basics of living organisms. They are essential, just sophisticated on off switches whose state can be flipped from one to the other by applying an electrical signal or booster that can be amplified or signal arranged together in complex circuits. They can store the ones and zeros of computational data or carry out the basic logic function, that is and or operators etc., that underlie all computation. The first computer chip had dozens of transistors on them, but nowadays they each contains billions of transistors. But the constant shaving down of the sizes of transistors and the wires that interconnect them on a chip have now made them so tiny that the random quantum effects are being to limit any further shrinkage. Whole new pathways are needed, and researchers around the world are pursuing a wide variety of approaches to overcome these limits. One of the more unusual projects is taking shape of Parade University, where Professor Piet, in collaboration with researchers at other universities, is exploring the potential of a metallic element called tellurium. He is the Dr. Professor Piet, the Richard and Mary Professor of Electrical and Computer Science Engineering at Purdue University, leader of team that developed beryllium nanowires. So, using rare earth elements. Beryllium is a rare earth element. We can use it as a part of transistor, which can efficiently used. So the team found has a highly unusual property. Unlike so-called two-dimensional material such as graphene and boron nitrate, which naturally forms into sheets just a single atom of too thick that have unique properties. Under special conditions, stellium can form into what are essential one-dimensional forms. Single atom in a kind of daisy chain, each holding one onto one other neighboring atom and forming a stack of slightly offset pairs. And that's where the twist comes in. These single chain arrays of beryllium atom don't form a straight line. Rather, it forms a stack of pairs that just naturally twist into a helical form, reminiscent of DNA molecules or the steps of a spiral staircase. But unlike DNA, which only goes one way. Beryllium has no preferences for whether the helix turns clockwise or counterclockwise. The two forms are produced in equal measures. Beryllium, being metallic, is naturally conductive when encased into a nanotube of a nanoconductive material, for which the professor and his team used boron nitride. The pair of materials form a junction that can act as a field effect transistor, the team found. Yeah, who is the professor of electronical engineering at Parrot, says these beryllium helix in their boron nitride nanotubes have the potential to be the smallest transistors ever made. It is shown in the figure. The entire transistor structure can be just 2 nanometers across, while today's smallest silicon transistor range from 10 to 20 nanometers. Many teams around the world are working on a wide variety of ultra thin materials, the professor says, in hopes of finding replacements for the silicon in the microchips that increasingly are at the heart of nearly everything we use, from smartphones and laptops, computers, to biomedical diagnostic and treatment devices, to smart thermostats, applications or appliances, and light bulbs. But the professor and his co-researchers, including some at Michigan Technological University, Washington University in St. Louis, and the University of Texas in Dallas, says beryllium is one of the most promising. They published their initial results in the journal Nature Electronics earlier this year, demonstrating working transistor but built on this principle. So professor did not originally set out to create helical material or even one-dimensional one. The initial research was aimed to create new two-dimensional material to build upon the existing essential essential areal of materials such as graphene, which is pure carbon in a hexagonal lattice, or silicene, stannine, or phenene, or hexagonal boron nitrate, or a family of material known as transition metal. Chalcogenites, they worked to create a two-dimensional form of pure beryllium and succeeded in 2018, producing a new material called tellurine. But the team pursued further probing to see what other interesting properties tellurium might yield for electronics. Three pursued doctoral students led the search for a one dimensional form of the element which is part of the rare earth group and for a way to make transistors from it. Researchers at Purdue and the University of Texas at Dallas were able to image the material using transmission electron microscopy, providing the chain material helical structures, which is based on the stack of two atom pairs whose layers are bound together by van der Waals forces. These pairs of arrange themselves into a helical just as base pairs of DNA helix do. It was a very challenging to take a picture of this chain of atom, the professor said, but the structure is an inherent property of these atoms. So in the figure, which can seen in a transmission electron microscope image, the wavy white lines are strings of atoms of beryllium arranged like a DNA molecule. Researchers have not seen this behavior in any other material. So carbon nanotubes are conductive, however, so the originally configurable tellurium chains inside carbon nanotubes would not allow for a functioning transistor, which would need to be electrically isolated from its environment. To form functionality transistor, the 1D beryllium chains would need to be grown inside nanotubes non-conductive casing instead. Fortunately, there is a such thing. For that, the team turned to Yok Kin Yap at Miching Technological University, who provided a variety of nanotubes made of boron nitrate, a naturally insulating compound that readily forms 2D sheets and nanotubes. These nanotubes took the place of carbon based ones, and the tellurium chains were grown inside them. While trapping a single tellurium 1D stand would require a nanotube just of 0.8 nanometer across. The boron nitrate nanotubes they used only go down to about 2 nanometer across, so the testing invaded tubes containing several strands rather than just one. While bigger than the ideal single strand helix transistor, the multi strand version is still small enough to handily beat other transistor technology in the race to the bottom in scaling down microchips. Ya says, even if you have a few of these strands, you still have the smallest transistor, he says, but he continues to work on way of further improving the system. The researchers so far has not produced any way of specifically making use of the difference between the two mirror image version of the two helical structure. But if some chemical or electrical system could separate the two forms to make use of the difference, perhaps it could provide a way of encoding additional information in each strand. We are working on that. Another direction the team is pursuing in the use of selenium atoms instead of beryllium, which may turn out to have similar properties, but it is more difficult to handle. Already, some companies are working to develop the technology further. The US Defense Department, which partially funded the research, is interested in research on a variety of silicon alternatives. But the concept is still a lab scale project with a great deal of development needed before it could become a practical product. Though there may be some applications that could be implemented sooner. So, DNA origami. Meanwhile, other teams are around the world continue to explore yet another alternative to silicon for smaller and faster computation. This would take advantage of some of the built-in capacities of replication and self-repair that these biomolecules offer. Such efforts have been going on since at least the 1990s, with much interesting research, but so far no clear application that provides advantages over other materials. Researchers at Israel's Institute produced some of the earliest DNA and enzyme based computers in 2004, and a team of others at Weizmann made a DNA computer capable of assisting with cancer diagnosis. By 2013, researchers succeeded in starting or storing large amount of data in the form of DNA storage. Researchers continue Researchers continue towards the truly reversible, flexible computational tool making use of DNA, but that goal has remained elusive. Lab scale devices have been developed, but nothing has yet reached commercial application. In quest, the quest continues though because theoretical calculation have shown that in principle an amount of DNA based material smaller than a typical PC could be many order of magnitude faster and stores order of magnitude more data than all computers even built, some researchers have estimated. John Relief, a distinguished professor of computer science at Duke University, is on the leader in this area of research. His recent work has focused on phased and compact DNA logic circuit DNA based digital data structure, DNA barcodes for single molecule fingerprinting, and DNA based analog computing. Some of this research is focused on using the ability of DNA molecule to bind to one another to create complex shapes. These can aid in the diffusion process of DNA strands, which is one of the limiting factor in DNA computing. Though the diffusion is very slow by computing standards, it is counterbalanced by the extraordinary parallelism made possible by tiny, easily replicable molecule. A whole field of DNA origami has arisen using shapes constructed from DNA chains as a way of speeding the diffusion process and many other functions. In principle, DNA computing could have many advantages. The material itself is abundant and cheap, and unlike many of the materials now used in microchip manufacturing, there is nothing toxic or hazardous about it or the material used in to handle it. Any in principle, it can be just about anything in terms of computational power for a given weight or volume. Last year, for the first time, a DNA computer was demonstrated by Professor David Doty at University of California at Santa Cruz that would actually be reprogrammed. Until then, every DNA computer was hardwired with the instruction and could only run a single algorithm, Doty said. But the new devices open to the door to potential multi-purpose DNA computing. Doty suggested the programmable DNA device could be used to program DNA robots, which in turn could be used, for example, to target specific cancers in the body. The research described last year in Nature is still very basic and exploratory and far from any practical application, but it is perhaps the most promising sign so far that the untapped potential of DNA computing might be on the horizon. Whether it's in the form of some kind of reprogrammable DNA based computer or in the form of transistor made from elementary material whose natural structures mimic those of the DNA molecule, it seems likely that some kind of helical molecules will be playing an important part in the future of computational electronics. Thank you.